Grand Rising, and welcome to another segment of CLG View Point. I'm Cindy Lorraine Grais, and it's an honor and a pleasure to have you here today on segment number 34. Today is Monday, March the 10th, 2025. In this segment, we will cover underground fridge, doesn't need electricity, and another version of a root cellar. International news will be covering U.S. federal agencies targeted in Chinese hacker for hire. U.S. CDC plans study into vaccines and autism. Local news, thousands of undocumented construction workers to get legal status in Canada. Why is there growing support by Canadians to build a cross-Canada oil pipeline? Island region saw highest increase of homeless deaths in 2023. BC Corners. Relief, BC Hydro deal keeps lights on for threatened Caribou Power Plant. And inspirational soul of light is Buffalo Calf Woman. Each segment I like to start with a clearing, a sage clearing. So I take a sage stick, which is a herb. Oops, wrong one. There we go. To clear all low entity energies, leaving positive energy, only divine love and divine light is allowed here. So to all low energy entities, you are healed, forgiven, enlightened, sent back to your perfect place, escorted by my spiritual guides, and so it is. I'm divine love and divine light. We are now on to our first video, root cellar.
Me as I do a little root cellar restock. If you guys are new here and have not seen our root cellar, it is one of my top favorite projects on the homestead. It acts as our grocery store. We live far away from town, so we are not able to leave the house every day and just grab what we need. So right now we have our chicken and peacock feeds stored in here for easy access, and we also keep any extra water stored in store-bought jugs just in case we need them. And of course we have the Wallaby Mylar bags with food. And I hope this garden season that we can line this with all the things that we grew and preserved on the homestead.
And our second root cellar is a refrigerator with no electricity.
This is an underground fridge that runs without electricity. It's called a ground fridge, and it's a naturally cooled cellar that's a modern take on the traditional root cellar. It can hold 12 refrigerators worth of fruits, vegetables, wine, and much more with its 3,000 litres of storage capacity. The ground fridge is simply dug into the ground and covered with the soil that's been dug up, giving it a natural insulating power that means the temperature inside remains steady and cool throughout the entire year. Installing it doesn't require any permits like a normal cellar would, and ventilation is done by a fan with a timer that gains fresh, cool air during the night. It's big enough for 2 people to comfortably stand in, and you can walk in and out of it upright. It's perfect for those who are looking to live a bit more off-grid. What do you think of the ground fridge? Would you or someone you know want one? Let me know in the comments.
2 great ideas to preserving food for their winter. Root cellar. Yeah, I like that idea. I've been wanting one myself here at the farm. Now, on to international news. CBS News, March 6, 2025. U.S. federal agencies targeted in Chinese hacker for hire scheme. And the video.
Alarming hackers for hire scheme unveiled by the Justice Department. The targets reportedly included U.S. government agencies and were allegedly directed by the Chinese government. CBS News Homeland Security correspondent Nicole Skanga has more.
Dubbed Silk Typhoon, the U.S. says it uncovered a years-long Chinese espionage campaign
targeting U.S. government agencies, Chinese dissidents, and news organizations worldwide. Among the targets, according to court documents, the U.S. Defense Intelligence Agency, the U.S. Department of Commerce, and the New York State Assembly.
What's really notable about them is the volume and the intensity of how many organizations they choose to compromise.
Charles Carmichael is the Chief Technology Officer for Mandiant, Google's cybersecurity consulting firm.
There's a number of contracting organizations in China that conduct hacking operations and ultimately steal data from Western organizations.
Behind some of the alleged breaches is a hacking company known as iSoon, a major player in China's hacker-for-hire ecosystem. The Chinese government paid iSoon between roughly $10,000 and $75,000 for each email inbox it successfully infiltrated, according to court documents, deploying software capable of taking over victims' X accounts, bypassing multi-factor authentication, and allowing cybercriminals to send, delete, and forward tweets. That tactic used in order to understand public opinion outside of China. And the State Department's Rewards for Justice program is offering a up to $10 million bounty for any information regarding this sprawling hack and steal operation, Chanel.
And Nicole, this comes as serious cuts are now being made at the nation's top cyber defense agency, CISA. How might those cuts affect investigations and incidents like this?
There are serious concerns, Chanel, from serious people. I mean, NSA Cybersecurity Director Rob Joyce, former, we should say, who had retired back in November, was on Capitol Hill yesterday and said, you know, the cuts will have, quote, a devastating impact on cybersecurity and national security, for this country, but also really worldwide. CISA cut 130, actually more than 130 probationary workers in what is known as the Valentine's Day massacre that took place last month. And that might sound like a small number, but it's actually 4% of the nation's top cyber defense agency there. Many of those individuals were recruited specifically to detect and to eradicate foreign adversaries, insider threats, China, Russia, Iran, from the United States' aging critical infrastructure, the nation's pipelines, airports, energy grid, and water system. I spoke with one former employee who was fired. Her name is Kelly Shaw. We shared her story on CBS Mornings Plus. She ran a program installing sensors to detect these kinds of threats throughout U.S. critical infrastructure. Important work. She was the only person who did what she did, no longer at the agency, Chanel.
My personal thoughts. Under natural law, all corruption worldwide will be held accountable. Yes, under natural law, all corruption will be held accountable. Reuters, written by Dan Levine and Leah Douglas, March the 8th, 2025. U.S. CDC plans study into vaccines and autism, sources say. The U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention is planning a large study into potential connections between vaccines and autism. Two sources familiar with the matter told Reuters, despite extensive scientific research that has disproven or failed to find evidence of such links. The CDC's move comes amid one of the largest measles outbreaks the U.S. has seen in the past decade, with more than 200 cases and 2 deaths in Texas and New Mexico. The outbreak has been fueled by declining vaccination rates in parts of the United States where parents have been falsely persuaded that such shots do more harm than good. U.S. Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr., whose role includes authority over the CDC, has long sowed doubt over the safety of the combined vaccine for measles, mumps, and rubella, MMR. In a cabinet meeting last week, Kennedy initially downplayed news that a school-aged child had died of measles in Texas, the first such death in a decade, calling such outbreaks ordinary and failing to mention the role of vaccination to prevent measles. Last weekend, Kennedy published an opinion piece on Fox News that promoted the role of vaccination, but also told parents vaccination has a personal choice and urged them to consult with their physician. Quote, CDC will leave no stone unturned in its mission to figure out what exactly is happening, close quote, the statement said. Quote, the American people expect high quality research and transparency, and that is what CDC is delivering, close quote. President Donald Trump's nominee for CDC Director, Dr. Dave Weldon, is set for a U.S. Senate committee hearing next week. Some senators have expressed concern over Weldon's views on vaccines. Weldon declined to comment. Well, Dr. Wilbur Chen, a professor at the University of Maryland School of Medicine and former member of the CDC's Vaccine Advisory Panel, said the existence of such a study conducted by the federal government is itself enough to raise doubts about vaccines among some in the general public. Quote, it seems to signal that there is something there that is worth investigating. So that means there must be something going on between vaccines and autism, close quote, Chen said. Autism diagnoses in the United States have increased significantly since 2000, intensifying public concern. Many researchers attribute the rise in diagnosis to widespread screening and the inclusion of a broader range of behaviors to describe the condition. But some public figures have popularized the idea that vaccines are to blame, an idea stemming from a since debunked study from a British researcher, Andrew Wakefield, in the late 1990s. That connected a rise in autism diagnosis with widespread use of the MMR shot. The cause of autism are unclear. My personal thoughts. Full forensic audit under natural law. If there are any links to autism and vaccines, it will be found. This will definitely bring clarity into the rise of autism in our VIPs, the children. Now on to local news. CTV News, written by Daniel Otis, published March the 7th, 2025. Thousands of undocumented construction workers to get legal status in Canada. Thousands of undocumented construction workers will be able to apply for legal status in Canada under a new immigration pathway. In a Friday announcement, Immigration Minister Mark Miller said up to 6,000 undocumented workers will be accepted to combat Canada's housing crisis and fill severe labor shortages in the construction sector. Quote, we're reserving space for up to 6,000 undocumented workers across the country to participate in a new construction pathway that will help bring these workers up from underground into the light, close quote, Miller said. Some of these workers, Miller explained, came to Canada legally, but continued to work here after their statuses expired. Quote, these workers, often called undocumented or out-of-status workers, can be in precarious positions, exploited by their employers, exploited by other actors in society, and forced to work for lower wages and take unsafe jobs and aren't treated with dignity, Miller said. The immigration minister also seemed to push back against the notion that such migrants were being rewarded for overstaying their visas to illegally live and work in Canada. Quote, I want to be clear, no one should stay longer than they're legally allowed in Canada, Miller said. Those who do may face serious consequences, but it would be shooting ourselves in the foot to ask people that are working in these critical infrastructure projects to leave when they've been contributing to Canada, close quote. Thousands needed to fill construction jobs. According to a 2023 report from RBC, Canada's construction sector was short 64,000 workers. A 2024 report from industry organization Build Force Canada said that recruitment gap could swell to 85,000 construction workers by 2033. Quote, while the construction industry will always prioritize the recruitment of domestic workers, the changing career preferences of Canadian youth and rising retirement levels have made it more challenging for the industry to keep pace with accelerating construction demands, close quote. Build Force Canada Chair Sean Strickland previously said in a news release, quote, aligning immigration priorities more closely with the current and future needs of Canadian industries is therefore imperative, close quote. An April 2024 RBC report, moreover, said that the job vacancy rate in the construction sector reached 5.1% in the third quarter of 2023, making it among the highest across Canadian industries. The same report said 330,000 retiring construction workers will also need to be replaced over the next 10 years. Immigration, Refugees, and Citizen Canada, or IRCC, says approximately 1,365 out-of-status construction workers and their dependents have already been granted permanent resident status through a similar pilot project in the Greater Toronto Area. Historically, Canada has not recorded when people leave the country, so there is no reliable data on the number of individuals whose temporary resident status has expired, an IRCC spokesman told CTV News. Quote, as well, people who are out of status are difficult to survey as they are unlikely to come forward for research given their precarious status, close quote. My personal thoughts. Under natural law, if anyone is an illegal immigrant, they have to go back to their birth home. Gives opportunities to the people who are Canadian nationalists, have work to provide for their families. Would opening up free vocational training schools help provide the necessary training to our people so that they can be well trained in the construction industry? Thus building up the construction industry's workforce? CTV News, March 7, 2025. Why is there growing support by Canadians to build a cross-Canada oil pipeline? And here's the video.
Now, to see how Canadians are really feeling about the political climate these days, the sentiment appears to be getting stronger in supporting cross-Canada trade. A new poll shows most Canadians would welcome an oil and gas pipeline that would run from the west to the east coast. CTV's Kamal Karamali joins us with more on that.
Heather, businesses and politicians have been calling for more interprovincial trade partnerships in the middle of this tariff war with the U.S. Now, Nano's polling shows that 3 in 4 Canadians would support an oil and gas pipeline that would go from Alberta to eastern Canada. It found 54% support a pipeline, 21% somewhat would support it, only 11% are completely opposed to a pipeline. The prairie provinces show the highest support for the energy corridor, with 85% in favor. But perhaps most interestingly, Quebec shows nearly a 60% support of a pipeline. The Bloc Québécois have taken a firm stance against oil pipelines running through their province in recent years, with the premier saying he was fiercely opposed to any new projects, but the sentiment on the ground may be shifting.
The thing is, Quebec, with hydroelectricity, always prided itself on resisting carbon and pipelines. Fast forward now, with the threats from Donald Trump to the Canadian economy, 6 out of every 10 Quebecers are good with a national energy corridor.
Another Nanos poll highlights that 3 in 4 Canadians are also opposed to the idea of an economic union with the US, where Canada would adopt the US dollar. The idea would be similar to the European Union, where there's free trade while sharing a common currency. But the results showed 65% of those surveyed were opposed to it, 10% were somewhat opposed. Just a snapshot of the growing rift between Canadians and their American counterparts and the push for Canada to become less dependent on the US. Heather.
All right, Kamal, thank you.
Personal thoughts. Under natural law, the pipelines are to be built. So what or who is blocking this initiative under natural law? Subsequently, providing the work to our unemployed tradespeople. Check News, written by Liz Brown, March 7, 2025. Island region saw highest increase of homeless deaths in 2023. BC coroners. Across British Columbia, at least 458 homeless people died in 2023, marking a 23% increase from 2022, with Vancouver Island seeing the highest year-over-year increase, said the BC Coroner Service report on Friday. The BC Coroner Service report shows the number of people who died in 2023. 458 rose by 23% from 2022, with 373 deaths, and 54% from 2021 of 297 deaths. Between 2016 and 2023, approximately 1,940 homeless deaths were reported to BC coroners. Quote, the data speaks to the tragic reality of the struggles many face in our communities throughout BC, stated Dr. Jatinder Vaidwan, the province's chief coroner, on the latest report. And now to the video.
Fresh out of detox with no housing to catch her.
What makes it super scary? You don't know what you're taking.
Layla Stewart accidentally overdosed when she landed back on Victoria streets in February.
There's a fentanyl that's going around that looks exactly like crack, and people think that that's what it is, and they're just smoking it, and it's causing them to overdose. Last night alone, there was about 2 to 5 different overdoses on the block.
That's the now. This is the then.
In the year 2023 alone, 458 people at least who are experiencing homelessness died in our province.
BC Coroners is reporting 2 years ago, in 2023, a sharp rise in unhoused deaths, a 23% increase from 2022 and 3 times the deaths in 2020. More than 50% were in their 30s or 40s, 79% were male, most were accidental due to drug toxicity.
Unregulated drug toxicity contributed to 394 of the deaths reported in 2023.
A quarter of the deaths are happening in Island Health.
And it's notable that the Island Health region saw the largest increase in deaths year over year from 2022 into 2023, rising 54% from 74 deaths reported to 114 in 2023.
Last summer, the city of Victoria carried out sweeps on Pandora before ultimately fencing it off.
Every time they get pushed around or scattered off the block, we lose it, people.
The city's mayor says the report points to gaps provincially.
The answer is having enough shelter, enough housing, enough supportive services, enough health services to be able to provide people with the supports and the paths forward that they need.
On the island, most of the unhoused in 2023 died in Greater Victoria or Nanaimo. In the past 8 years, BC Coroner Service says nearly 2,000 people experiencing homelessness died in our province.
My personal thought. This is the most horrific news, that our homeless people's deaths are so high. The political officials build homes, but have you noticed that they haven't built the homes for the people who are living in the forests or on the streets? Basically, they have let our people suffer and die. Where is the compassion The funds are there, are under natural law, and it is requested for the public officials to build homes for the homeless and implement the I Am Cured program. Enough is enough. All will be held accountable. If the public officials, if they continue to not follow natural law and provide the necessary living and wellness needs of the people in Canada. Lady Smith's Shamanist Chronicle, written by Ruth Lloyd, March the 7th, 2025. Relief. BC Hydro deal keeps lights on for threatened caribou plant. Atlantic Power, Williams Lake's biggest source of tax revenue, had threatened closure if deal not reached. Williams Lake Mayor Surindapal Thrathor expressed his gratitude after hearing the Atlantic Power biomass energy plant in the city will continue to operate until 2029. Quote, "It's a big relief," he said, as he responded to the news an agreement had been reached on March 7th. Since hearing of Atlantic Power Corporation's plan to cease operations at its Williams Lake plant over a year ago, we have been encouraging all parties to come together to find a solution, and we are thrilled to see a resolution that prioritizes our community, local workers, and the continued operation of the essential facility. Quote, "Working together with Atlantic Power and in collaboration with a cross-ministry government working group, BC Hydro has negotiated an agreement that will keep the facility operating into the future." Personal thoughts. Under natural law, all electricity is free in Canada. Under natural law, all electricity is free to its people in Canada. The funds are there, so what is the holdup? It is time to take action and follow the law, and that is natural law. And so it is. I am Cindy Lorraine Grais, and I thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. If you feel compelled to, please share this forum. Have a truly, truly wonderful, wonderful day. The inspirational soul of light is the beautiful buffalo calf woman. Have an amazing day, and we will see you tomorrow, Tuesday, March 11th, 2025. Until we meet again.